Everything tastes better on Grant's Farm Bread. Everything tastes better on Grant's Farm Bread.
Taste them.
I'm Scott Pope. Join me for my special series, Vietnam Behind the Lines, tonight at 6 and 10.
Back now, 7:30 on this Thursday morning. It's a Thursday morning full of images of violence in the streets of Los Angeles, fires that are burning out of control even as officials try to restore order, and the National Guard has been called in. The violence is, of course, in reaction to the acquittal of 4 white police officers who were accused in the brutal beating of a black motorist, Rodney King, in Clearview of a videotape camera. Those scenes were broadcast worldwide, and they, of course, forced the resignation of L.A. Police Chief Daryl Gates. In just a couple of moments, we'll talk with his successor, Willie Williams, about the city he's inheriting. Katie had just asked a good question, which I'll put to the commissioner, about whether or not this might spread to other cities, because certainly there's a great deal of African-American frustration about what's happened.
Also, Bryant will be talking with one of the defendants in the case, police officer Ted Briseno, who, along with 3 other officers, are undoubtedly happier this morning than they were before the vote of acquittal. And we'll get congressional reaction from California Representative Maxine Waters.
All right, let's proceed to the news desk and get the latest from Faith Daniels. Faith, good morning.
Good morning, Bryant and Katie. Good morning, everyone. In Los Angeles, it's been a night lit by arson and punctuated by gunshots. The city is under a dusk-to-dawn curfew amid fears that more trouble lies ahead. Anger gave way to wholesale violence after a jury acquitted 4 local police officers at the end of a very long and closely watched trial. George Lewis is standing by in Los Angeles this morning. Hello again, George.
Good morning, Faith. The toll at this point, 8 dead, more than 100 injured, more than 150 fires set mostly in the south central section of Los Angeles. It has been a long night of rage and violence in the city's black community after the acquittal of the 4 officers charged in the Rodney King beating case. Demonstrations at the police headquarters got out of hand. Mobs took to the streets in both downtown and south central Los Angeles. There was a considerable looting and considerable arson throughout the south central sector of the city. Mayor Bradley has used his emergency powers to declare a curfew. He's also banned sales of ammunition in the city and also restricted sales of gasoline to motorists who need to refuel their cars. Hundreds of schools will be closed this morning in south central Los Angeles. The situation far from normal here this morning. Faith?
George, is there any hope that daybreak will help restore some calm?
That's what the authorities are hoping for. Police are out in greater numbers at this hour. The National Guard is on standby. The police chief, Daryl Gates, says he hopes that order can be restored with the local law enforcement officers and that daytime will bring calm here. But everyone has their fingers crossed. The situation is still very much on the edge.
All right, George, we'll be checking in with you throughout the morning. There is certainly widespread bewilderment at the verdict returned by the jury late Wednesday. Jesse Jackson says the beating shown in the notorious videotape has become a matter of national concern and demands action at the highest level.
Mr. Bush must speak out, and the Justice Department must step in and must do so quickly.
Earlier on today, Bryant spoke on the phone with one of the jurors who acquitted 4 officers.
The video did speak for me. When I first saw it on the air, when this incident first occurred, I was appalled. But after you sat through the trial with all of the evidence, the witnesses, everything that was there, the video too, you had to see what was going on. Had Rodney King gotten out of his vehicle, as he was ordered to do, and complied with the policeman's orders, nothing would have happened to him.
California Congressman Ron Dellums joined the call for federal action. Dellums said the verdict reminded him of episodes in the South where juries routinely exonerated murder and other criminal conduct. A Republican prosecutor is getting the evidence he wanted in the probe of the ill-fated House bank. Members of the House defied the chamber's Democratic leaders and voted to hand over all of the bank's records. In Guadalajara, Mexico, hundreds of people have been allowed to go home for the first time in a week, but they weren't allowed to stay. Residents of the area devastated by massive explosions were simply allowed to return to their homes briefly to retrieve some belongings. Work crews are now trying to figure out how to remove soil contaminated by gasoline, the fuel that fed the blasts. 6 people remain hospitalized in Virginia this morning with injuries they suffered in a train wreck. Amtrak's northbound passenger express, the Colonial, slammed into a truck at an unguarded crossing near Newport News. The train's engine and all 5 passenger cars were derailed. The truck's driver was killed, and all 53 people aboard the train were hurt. At the Middle East peace talks in Washington, another step in a positive direction, Israel expressed willingness to give Palestinians control of more than a dozen hospitals in occupied territories. But a Palestinian negotiator has criticized Israel's plan to hold municipal elections before a wider vote on Palestinian self-rule. That brings us up to date at 7:35 now.
Okay. Mindful of that Anne Murray song, A Little Good News. We could use.
Is there any?
I don't know. We could use some this morning. Let's go down to the National Cathedral. Willard Scott's in business this morning. We get to him a little bit late. We apologize for that, but good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning to you, and I know that it's a very busy morning, and I wanted to share with you one of the more beautiful sights in this country, and it belongs to all the people. It's the Episcopal Church, but it's the house of prayer and worship for all people. And that seems very appropriate this morning that we are here, and you will meet the dean later on, and he has some things to say. Please stay with us. We have a very special program here this morning. Actually, this is their national or annual flower mart. Food, flowers, and fun, that's the word. This beautiful cathedral was begun in 1907. Teddy Roosevelt was here in just 1990. It was finished, and President Bush laid the cornerstone, the final stone. I don't believe it's called the cornerstone. We'll find out what it really was called, the Tower Stone or something like that. But anyway, it is here in Washington on the highest spot of ground in the nation's capital, and you have a magnificent view of all around us. Happy birthday this morning from the National Cathedral, Washington Cathedral, from Hallmark. Mary Bugenhagen of Eden, New York is 106. She's beautiful and everybody loves her, a real winner. And as we turn the page of life, Ethel Meads of Los Angeles, California is 105. She wears her hat well, and we wish her a happy birthday, still in good health. Rapid City, South Dakota, 91 today, 90 degrees expected in Denver. The heat goes on. What a scorcher out west, maybe some thunder showers later in the high plains. Generally east of the Mississippi, scattered showers today. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Well, it feels like we've gone from winter to summer and kind of skipped springtime. Look at these temperatures today. Most 88 degrees in central Iowa. Chance of some rain developing then late tonight. Overnight low, 60 degrees.
Now back to New York, and here's Katie.
Thank you very much, Willard. One of the 4 Los Angeles policemen acquitted in the Rodney King trial, Officer Ted Briseno, is in our Burbank studio this morning, along with his attorney, John Barnett. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Katie.
Officer Briseno, let me ask you, what is your reaction to what's happening on the streets of Los Angeles this morning?
Well, Katie, I'm very upset about it. It's hard being an officer on the streets for 10 years and to see something like this going on. It's just devastating. I don't understand it. I don't see what they're accomplishing by doing this. It's very hard, and it hurts. It hurts deeply because there's going to be people, I know tomorrow, that are going to be out of work. A lot of families, and it's not a wealthy area down there.
Do you, officer, understand the enormous frustration that came as a result of this verdict?
Yes, I do. Yes.
You testified that during the Rodney King incident, the situation got out of control, I think were your words. Your testimony was potentially very harmful to the other defendants. Are you surprised that they were found not guilty?
Yes, I was surprised, but then, like I said, being an officer for 10 years and being involved, not in cases anything like this, but being involved in preliminary hearings, and then when cases go to trial, when you have a jury involved, you just don't understand, you don't know the direction a jury will take.
Do you stand by your assessment that the situation did get out of control?
I'm sorry, do I what?
Do you stand by your assessment that the situation did get out of control?
Yes, yes I do.
Do you think the other officers should have been found guilty?
That's not for me to decide. That I think that was for the jury, and I think the jury deliberated. They seemed like to me they took it was 7 days, and they came to their decision.
Mr. Barnett, do you think that the jurors in this case disregarded the evidence, or did they just interpret the videotape very differently than others did?
Katie, I think that they just interpreted the video in a far different way than many other people did.
Do you think the defense attorneys just put on a better case?
Well, I don't know whether, it wasn't a contest between the lawyers. Mr. White's an excellent lawyer. I don't think that that was the case at all. I think it was just a matter of 12 citizens looking at all of the evidence and deciding that there just was not enough evidence to convict anyone.
Officer Briseno, what kind of pressure were you under when you decided to break this so-called code of silence and talk about the actions of your fellow officers?
Well, Katie, I've never been under any pressure as far as the department from the very beginning, just as I stated in my testimony, and I still stand by that testimony. As far as any pressure, that came prior to me testifying. That was the only time that I had really received any type of pressure at all.
Can you describe that pressure for us?
Well, I think Mr. Barnett can explain that a lot better in more detail. That's just some of the things that had happened prior to me testifying.
Can you do that for us, Mr. Barnett?
Well, I can only say that there were several factions and groups of people who did not want Officer Briseno to tell the truth, to tell it the way it was. And Officer Briseno, from the beginning, within 5 minutes of the event being over, told the truth. He told it to his probationer 5 minutes after the event. He told it to his partner the next day, and he told it to the jury. Officer Briseno told the truth about what he perceived happened out there on March 3rd, 1991, and some people were not happy with that.
Officer Briseno, do you have any regrets about doing so, about coming forward and not aligning yourself with your fellow officers?
Oh, no, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. That was the slightest thing from my mind. No regrets whatsoever.
One of the defendants said that he thought Rodney King was dusted, on PCP, and he didn't know how violent he might become. Did you have that same impression?
Katie, later on, at the beginning of my first arrival on the scene, that wasn't what was going through my mind. I didn't come to that. I, too, came to that conclusion that I thought he was dusted. But that wasn't until after Mr. King we had tried what we called, or the department is calling, a swarm technique, and which did not work. And then when he was tased twice, and that did not work. And then when I seen he had risen to his feet, and when he had charged towards the direction of Officer Powell, that's when things started clicking in my mind, and that's when I thought at that time, then, this guy has to be dusted.
In your view, was this a clear case of excessive force?
In my view, yes.
Officer Ted Briseno, John Barnett, thank you so much for talking with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie.
And Bryant is back with a man who's inheriting a city in trouble. That's right after this.
It's happening now. You're going to feel great all morning. Grape Nuts, try it for a week.
I've been eating Grape Nuts and I feel great.
Try Grape Nuts, the fat-free natural energy source. See how good you feel.
Breakfast with Grape Nuts is a great way to help keep us all going. And it's really delicious.